In this video, I am going to talk about APOE4 and Alzheimer's. APOE4 increases your risk of getting Alzheimer's. Learning you have APOE4 can therefore be very scary and frightening, especially if you have witnessed Alzheimer's firsthand. In this video, I will talk to you about why you are at increased risk, but more importantly, how you can substantially reduce your risk of getting Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's can be prevented. What is APOE? APOE is a gene, and there are 3 alleles associated with the gene. You get 1 allele from your mother and 1 allele from your father. The 3 alleles are 2, 3, and 4. Therefore, you can have APOE 22, 23, 24, 33, 34, or 44. Let me share with you some of the statistics about APOE4 increasing your risk of getting Alzheimer's. About 20% of the population have 1 or 2 copies of APOE4. Approximately 2% of the population in the U.S. have APOE4. At age 60, people with APOE4 have an increased risk, and for men, it's an 11-fold increased risk, and for women, it is a 12-fold increased risk. 40 to 60% of Alzheimer's cases diagnosed before the age of 70 are associated with APOE4. Here's a little bit of good news. 50% of those people who have 2 copies of APOE4, meaning that they're APOE44, don't get Alzheimer's and live to the age of 80 and beyond. Let me talk to you about why you are at increased risk when you have APOE4. The first thing I want to talk about is the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier protects our brains from toxins that we are exposed to. People who have APOE4 allele have a weakened blood-brain barrier. And this is compared to people who have APOE2 and 3. The study used a contrast-enhanced MRI, and they found that people with APOE4 allele had the weakened blood-brain barrier. They found that the blood-brain barrier broke down in the hippocampus area. In general, AD brain atrophy is found in 4 regions of the brain, and the hippocampus has the second most level of atrophy. The hippocampus is also where there is the most aluminum accumulation. The major function of the hippocampus is learning and memory. Let me share with you the areas let me say that again. Let me tell you about that the hippocampus is for storing memories, transferring short to long-term memory, and spatial navigation. And these are all symptoms of Alzheimer's. Aluminum also weakens the blood-brain barrier. Now I would like to talk to you about beta amyloid, which is a biomarker of Alzheimer's. The rates of beta amyloid accumulation is the highest in people with APOE4. Beta amyloid 42 is the biomarker for Alzheimer's. Beta amyloid is amino acids strung together kind of like a necklace, and they are very sticky, and when they stick together, they will form clumps, which are called oligomers. The oligomers can clump further, resulting in plaque. AB42 oligomers are 50% more toxic than beta amyloid 42. On top of that, aluminum makes the oligomers more toxic. Plaques, which are insoluble clumps of beta amyloid, are not as toxic as beta amyloid and beta amyloid oligomers. Alzheimer's patients with APOE4 compared to people with APOE 3/4 have 2.7 times higher levels of oligomers. So there's beta amyloid, which is toxic. There's beta amyloid oligomers, which are more toxic. And then there are plaques, which are less toxic. And people with APOE4 have more beta amyloid oligomers, 2.7 times more than other people with APOE status 2s and 3s. The other problem that APOE4 generates is clearance of beta amyloid from the brain. When we sleep at night, our brain flushes itself, which removes toxins as well as other waste products from our brain. With APOE4, the clearance is much slower. Now I'd like to talk about a study that was done of workers in an aluminum plant. And these workers, which are exposed to aluminum, were compared to the office staff, which do not come in contact with the aluminum. What was found was that in the presence of both aluminum and the APOE4 gene, the two factors interact with each other and show what is called a synergistic effect. A synergistic effect produces a combined effect greater than the sum of their separate parts. So for the workers, there was a dose-dependent response with the two factors, that if they had both APOE4 and aluminum, they're going to be at greater risk of getting Alzheimer's. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is that you've probably realized that what you're going to need to do to reduce your risk of getting Alzheimer's is to eliminate aluminum. So the first thing that you need to do is to begin to identify sources of aluminum that you're being exposed to, especially on a daily basis, and eliminate them with safer alternatives. You also want to drink silica water, which the form of silica found in mineral waters is called OSA, orthosilicic acid, and it binds to the aluminum, forming a tight bond, both detoxifying the aluminum as well as facilitating its elimination from the body. Examples of silica water are Fiji, Volvic, and Spritzer. There are more mineral waters that also have enough OSA, enough silica to remove aluminum, and I will post a link to those waters. Also, too, with regards to identifying sources of aluminum, I have 2 videos on sources of aluminum, as well as I will post a link to a list of the sources so that you can print it out and take a look and don't have to take notes during the video. Now what I'd like to talk about is some of the other protocols that have been developed to prevent and reverse Alzheimer's. Are actually recommending some things that are actually what I call workarounds for aluminum toxicity. And one of these recommendations is the keto diet. Our body gets energy from 2 sources, from metabolizing fats as well as from carbohydrates in the form of glucose. The keto diet puts your body in the state of ketosis, which forces your body to burn fats rather than burning glucose. than burning the carbohydrates that will lead to glucose. In addition, aluminum interferes with glucose metabolism. One of the earliest biomarkers for Alzheimer's is hypometabolism, which means you have low glucose metabolism. Dennis has done an evidence-based write-up giving more details about this, and I will post a link to that write-up. And let me talk a little bit further about fat metabolism. I've just talked about glucose metabolism, which is converting carbohydrates into glucose. Now let me talk about fat, because aluminum also interferes with that. That how aluminum does this is by inhibiting the biosynthesis of L-carnitine. L-carnitine is required for transporting stored fats as medium and long-chain fatty acids for mitochondrial energy production. Also, too, just to note that aluminum interferes with hundreds of processes in our bodies and brains. I am APOE 3/4 and soon to turn 70. I have been drinking silica water for about the past 10 years, as well as I have worked towards identifying sources of aluminum that I'm being exposed to and eliminating them and getting safer alternatives. That what I have found, prior to starting all of this, I had no noticeable cognitive problems. But since doing this, I find that my brain is sharper, quicker, faster, and my short-term memory has improved, as well as my long-term memory. I'm able to recall things much quicker, and I have less senior moments. But one of the other things that happened that surprised me was that I lost weight. Now, all my life, I have been not overweight, that I have been a fine weight. I've gained a few pounds every decade or so, but still did not consider myself overweight. But once I started eliminating the aluminum, that slowly I began to lose weight, and I actually ended up losing about 10 pounds. And as you just learned, is that the reason why this occurred was that aluminum interfered with both of the ways that my body gets energy, by fat metabolism and by glucose metabolism, which is converting carbohydrates into glucose, which gives you energy. So by correcting that, my body was functioning better, and I lost the weight. For those of you not familiar with how I got involved with Alzheimer's and how I learned my APOE 3/4 status, was that when my mother-in-law was 85, she began to have symptoms of Alzheimer's, which began to impact significantly on her daily functioning. When my husband learned that there was no treatment for Alzheimer's, being a scientist, he began to read the scientific literature. He dug deep into the research to try to find ways to help his mother. He achieved his goal and developed what he has called the Krauss Protocol. The Krauss Protocol is available to you for free at our website, and it is also in Dennis's Silica Water book. Also, if you would like to learn more details about APOE4 in terms of your risk, as well as how you can reduce your risk, that is written about in Dennis's fourth and most recently published book, Finding a Cause and Potential Cures for Alzheimer's. I hope the information in this video motivates you to take steps to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's. I also hope that by taking these steps and reducing your risk, your fear will also be reduced. I know my fear has been substantially reduced. Alzheimer's can be prevented.